She didn't resist. She didn't run. She just stood there, calm, quiet, and watching. Seconds later, she was face down on the pavement, slammed by two cops who had no clue they were assaulting an FBI agent working undercover. It was a Friday night in downtown Atlanta, the kind of night when the city felt like it never slept. Bars were packed, music blasted from every direction, and the sidewalks buzzed with laughter, high heels clicking, and the distant rhythm of a passing bass line. Everyone was there to forget the week and live in the moment. Everyone except one woman. She stood quietly near the entrance of the Blue Crown, a popular downtown bar. Dressed in jeans, sneakers, and a plain hoodie, she looked like anyone else out for a casual night. But Agent Maya Thompson wasn't there to party. She was there on a mission. Maya had been working undercover with the FBI for nearly 6 years. She wasn't just good at blending in. She was exceptional. Tonight, her assignment was to monitor and collect intel on a man the FBI had been tracking for months, a suspected trafficker known for recruiting vulnerable women from nightclubs. According to intelligence, he was scheduled to make contact with a new victim tonight. She stood casually, sipping water, watching the alleyway where he had just entered with a young woman. Her fingers moved slowly as she raised her phone to discreetly snap a photo for later analysis. That's when she heard it. "Get your hands up. Now!" 2 police officers rushed her from behind. She turned, startled, and instinctively put her hands up. But the officers didn't pause. One grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. The other swept her legs and slammed her hard to the concrete. The breath rushed out of her lungs. People around her gasped. Some screamed. At least 3 phones came out to record. "What are y'all doing?" "She didn't do anything," someone shouted from the crowd. "She's just standing there, man. You can't do that," another voice added. But the officers ignored the chaos. Officer Darren Watts and Officer Rebecca Kelly had received a vague call about a black woman involved in suspicious activity outside a bar. No specific threat, no crime witnessed, but they acted on instinct or bias, depending on who you asked. "She's interfering with an ongoing situation," one officer said, pressing her harder into the ground. That ongoing situation? Maya was the one investigating it. Through clenched teeth, she tried to speak. "I'm FBI," she whispered. "Undercover. Let me go." Neither officer seemed to hear her, or maybe they didn't believe her. Her hands were forced into cuffs, her face pressed to the pavement. In the span of less than 10 seconds, an experienced federal agent conducting a classified operation had been violently arrested, not for any crime, but for being in the wrong place, wearing the wrong clothes, and fitting the wrong description. Inside the alley, the man Maya had been watching walked away, unnoticed, untouched. And with that, the entire mission started to fall apart. But for the 2 officers who made the arrest, the fallout was only beginning. While Maya lay face down on the concrete, her mind raced. She wasn't just another woman on the street. She was an elite agent, part of a months-long FBI operation targeting one of the most dangerous trafficking networks in the southeastern U.S. But none of that mattered right now. With her face scraping the sidewalk and the cold bite of handcuffs cutting into her wrists, Maya knew the mission had just taken a devastating turn. Earlier that day, in a private conference room at the FBI's Atlanta field office, Maya had been reviewing photos, maps, and notes with her team. They had been chasing a man named Victor Vic Donnelly, a well-connected trafficker who posed as a club promoter. His operation was slick, organized, and brutal. He targeted young women, promising them glamour and opportunity. Instead, he funneled them into exploitation and abuse. The Bureau had spent months building this case. Victims had started talking. Patterns had emerged, but they still didn't have enough to make a clean arrest. That's where Maya came in. As a black woman in her early 30s, Maya fit right into the nightlife scene Donnelly operated in. She could go places other agents couldn't. She didn't carry a gun on this assignment. Her only tools were a phone, an earpiece, and her instincts. Her goal tonight was simple: observe Donnelly, identify his target, and document the interaction. When Maya spotted him outside the Blue Crown speaking to a nervous-looking young woman, she knew she was in the right place. The girl couldn't have been older than 21, and she clutched her purse like she wanted to disappear. Donnelly leaned in close, whispered something, and pointed toward the alley behind the bar. That's when Maya started moving. She positioned herself near the exit, ready to follow discreetly. She even sent a coded text to her field handler. Contact made. Two moving into alley. But then, without warning, her world flipped, literally. The police officers who tackled her never asked questions. They saw a black woman, alone, standing by herself in a hoodie near a bar. Someone had called in a vague report, suspicious behavior, and that was all the excuse they needed. They responded with aggression instead of inquiry. They didn't identify themselves. They didn't ask for her ID. They simply acted. And in doing so, they blew an active federal investigation. Inside the bar, one of Maya's backup agents, watching from a distance, realized what was happening and immediately called it in. By the time the first FBI supervisor arrived on the scene, Maya had already been shoved into the back of a squad car. "You just cuffed one of our own," the agent told the stunned officers. Officer Watts looked confused. "Wait, she's FBI?" Maya, now bruised and furious, stared through the window. She wasn't angry just for herself. She was angry for the young woman who had just walked into the shadows with a predator, while her own team had been taken out by the very people meant to protect. The police had no idea what they had interrupted, and soon they would realize just how big of a mistake they'd made. Officer Darren Watts stood frozen beside his patrol car, the color draining from his face as the words sunk in. "You just cuffed one of our own." Agent Cole, Maya's backup handler from the FBI's field office, had arrived on the scene within minutes of the arrest. He flashed his badge and pointed directly at Maya, still locked in the back of the squad car. "She's FBI, and you just compromised an active federal operation." Officer Kelly stammered. We didn't know. We got a call. A report of a disturbance." "Cole, cut her off. Did she resist? Did she threaten anyone? Did you ask for ID? Or did you just slam her because she looked suspicious in a hoodie?" The street had gone quiet. Bar patrons were still filming, some narrating now. One man whispered to his phone, "Yo, they tackled an undercover FBI agent. This is wild." Inside the car, Maya sat upright, still handcuffed, her lips slightly bloodied and her wrists bruised. But her eyes? Cold, focused, unforgiving. She was used to being underestimated in the field. It came with the job. But never had she been this exposed, this vulnerable, and by her supposed allies in law enforcement. The squad car door opened, and Agent Cole leaned in. "They're releasing you now. Medical is on the way." Maya didn't blink. "We lost the target." "I know," he said. "We'll regroup. But first, let's take care of you." One by one, the officers' faces shifted from authority to guilt. The handcuffs were removed. Officer Kelly muttered, "I'm sorry, we didn't realize." But Maya didn't respond. Her mission was ruined. A victim had just walked into danger, and Donnelly was likely already disappearing into the night. A clean takedown had turned into public humiliation, not just for Maya, but for the Bureau. Within hours, the footage hit social media. Multiple clips showed the moment Maya was tackled and cuffed. Hashtags began trending. Hashtag wrong woman, hashtag undercover FBI, and hashtag she's investigation. The story went viral. Back at the FBI office, Director Franklin was livid. "We didn't lose this case because our agent made a mistake. We lost it because of reckless, untrained policing." An internal review was launched. The Bureau filed an official complaint with the Atlanta PD. But public outrage was already doing its own kind of justice. News outlets picked up the story. The footage played on local and national networks. Commentators debated everything from racial profiling to interagency training failures. In an emergency press conference, the Atlanta Police Department issued a carefully worded statement. "We regret the incident involving a federal agent during a field response. While the officers were acting on a reported disturbance, the department is taking the matter seriously and has launched a full investigation." But the internet wasn't satisfied with vague apologies. Neither was Maya. Despite her physical injuries, she returned to the field office within 48 hours. Not for revenge, but to finish what she started. She requested to be reassigned to the case. "We're not letting Donnelly walk because two uniforms didn't do their job." And her superiors agreed. You're the only one who knows how he moves. We'll rebuild, but we're doing it on your terms now." The mission was back on, and this time there would be no mistakes. Maya didn't rest. The bruises on her wrists were still fresh. Her lips still sore from hitting the concrete. But she had a job to finish, and this time she was going in smarter, stronger, and with full agency support behind her. 3 days after the failed sting outside the Blue Crown, the Bureau had reorganized its approach. The arrest had blown Maya's cover in that specific location, but Donnelly wasn't a one-bar criminal. He operated across multiple clubs throughout the city, and thanks to Maya's field notes, they now had a broader map of his movements. "We hit pause, not stop," said Director Franklin during the new strategy briefing. "We adapt, and we let Maya lead." This time, Maya was outfitted with more support. She had a live wire in her ear, a new alias, and a backup team posted at all exit points around the next target, a more upscale club in Midtown known as Velvet Echo. It was the kind of place Donnelly frequented to impress his recruits. Exclusive VIP sections, overpriced cocktails, and lots of models and influencers trying to be seen. Maya didn't blend in with a hoodie anymore. Tonight, she wore a sleek black dress and heels. Her hair was straightened, her eyes sharp as ever. She wasn't just hunting, she was bait. The team had intercepted word that Donnelly was expected to meet a new girl there, possibly one he'd been grooming online through fake social media accounts. The Bureau had even contacted the girl, convincing her to back out and let Maya take her place. At 10:12 p.m., Donnelly walked in. He was slick, charming, dressed like someone trying hard not to look rich. He scanned the club, his eyes landing on Maya exactly as predicted. She leaned against the bar, pretending to check her phone, giving him just enough time to approach. "You look bored," he said, sliding into the seat next to her. Maya smiled just enough, only because no one interesting's shown up yet. He laughed. "Well, I'm glad I walked over." The conversation began, playful, flirtatious, and calculated. Maya had rehearsed this kind of interaction dozens of times. She had to keep him close long enough for her team to scan his device, record verbal evidence, and identify any contacts in the club. For 30 minutes, she played the part of a curious girl with dreams of modeling and vague desperation for opportunity. Donnelly bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. Then he leaned in close and said the line they've been waiting for. "I know people. If you're serious about working, I can take you somewhere private. Real money, real exposure." That was the phrase, the signal. Maya repeated the code word, exposure. Her voice calm, clear, and loud enough to be picked up by the wire. The team outside sprang into motion. Agents moved in silently through both entrances. Unmarked vehicles pulled into position. But Maya wasn't done. She stood slowly and looked Donnelly dead in the eye. "You don't know how badly you messed up," she said. He blinked. "What?" She reached into her clutch, pulled out her badge, and laid it flat on the bar. "FBI, you're under arrest." Before Donnelly could move, 2 agents cuffed him from behind. Clubgoers gasped and backed away, phones flying into the air to record. The man who had slipped through her fingers days before, while she was being slammed into the pavement, was now being dragged out in cuffs. The entire mission salvaged. And Maya? She didn't just take him down. She took back her power. Victor Donnelly's arrest made headlines the very next morning. Photos of him in cuffs, head down, flanked by FBI agents outside Velvet Echo, were plastered across the front pages of every major Atlanta paper. News anchors recounted the takedown with breathless intensity, but most didn't know the full story. They didn't know what it took to get there. Behind that arrest was a woman who had been thrown face first to the ground just days earlier, who had watched a predator slip through her fingers because the very system meant to protect justice had mistaken her for a threat. Maya Thompson didn't care about the cameras. She didn't give a press conference. She didn't post on social media. Instead, she returned to the FBI office and got straight to work, processing Donnelly's case files, interviewing recovered victims, and ensuring that the evidence would stick in court. He wasn't just a nightclub sleaze. Donnelly was part of a much larger trafficking network. His arrest led to 5 more coordinated busts across the state and the rescue of 9 young women who had been trapped in his organization. Each of them had a story, and now each of them had a future. But while the FBI celebrated, the storm hadn't passed for Maya. The viral videos of her being slammed outside the Blue Crown continued to circulate. Public pressure mounted. Civil rights organizations demanded accountability. The question on everyone's lips was the same. How could trained officers fail to recognize a federal agent? And why had they reacted with force instead of facts? The Atlanta Police Department eventually issued a full apology. Officers Watts and Kelly were both suspended pending internal investigation. Community leaders pushed for mandatory bias and de-escalation training across all law enforcement agencies. But Maya wasn't interested in punishment. She wanted change. 2 weeks after Donnelly's arrest, she agreed to speak at a joint press conference hosted by the FBI and local community leaders. She stood before a crowded room, cameras flashing, microphones everywhere, and finally told her side of the story. "I wasn't tackled because I was dangerous," she said calmly. "I was tackled because I didn't look like someone they expected to be wearing a badge." The room went silent. "I wasn't holding a weapon. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was doing my job, and I was doing it well. But that night, I was reduced to a stereotype, and that stereotype could have cost lives." Her speech echoed far beyond Atlanta. News outlets played it nationally. Law enforcement agencies across the country began quietly revisiting their field protocols. Internal discussions started about better cooperation between federal and local officers, and most importantly, about the role that unconscious bias continues to play in split-second decisions. Maya wasn't trying to be famous. She was trying to make the next undercover agent, especially if she's a woman of color, just a little bit safer. When asked if she had any regrets, Maya shook her head. "No, I regret nothing. I took down the man I was sent to catch. I protected women who couldn't protect themselves. And I exposed something this country still needs to reckon with." Then she paused, glanced at the cameras, and added, "Next time, don't just ask who someone is. Ask what they're doing and why." The room burst into applause. The story of Maya Thompson wasn't just about one takedown. It was about standing tall after being knocked down, about finishing the mission, no matter who or what stands in your way. And somewhere in a quiet office in the FBI field headquarters, her bruises healing and her badge polished clean, Maya prepared for her next assignment. Because undercover never meant unseen.